Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to a new episode of the Field of 68 after lunch. My name is Rob Doster. I have Mike LaTulip here with me, and we have a lot to get to on this show. We're going to talk a little bit about Illinois and Purdue in the top of the Big Ten and what Mike LaTulip, our Big Ten expert, thinks about all of that. We're going to dive a little bit into Iowa State and some of what's going on in the Big 12. It's very strange to me to sit here and think about how the likes of Baylor and Kansas and Iowa State are chasing Houston, Texas Tech, and BYU as the favorites in the great Big 12 conference. And I specifically asked Mike what he wants to talk about on the show, and he says, are college teams going to adapt by playing more zone the way that we've seen in the NBA playoffs? So I'm going to let my
That wasn't the only thing. That was the last thing I said. That was the last thing I said.
But we might get into that a little bit here towards the end. But I want to start with some news that kind of came out yesterday. It's not a surprise. We've been expecting this, but the ACC is reducing their league schedule from 20 games to 18 games. And the big reason that they're doing it, at least what they're saying, is that they want to try to maximize the number of non-conference games that they are going to be able to get this season to avoid having situations where, frankly, teams at the bottom of the league are playing teams at the bottom of the league, and you're running into the league dragging each other down. It's a very strange occurrence here for what the ACC is doing, and it's opposite of what most of these other power conferences are doing. And Mike, I'm curious, what's your take on it, and what do you think this impact is going to be for the ACC?
Well, I think it's good that they're doing it, for one, but because it does give you more bites at the apple. But at the same time, what's the health of your conference if you're having to look outside of it to get quality opportunities? I think that's the whole point, right? So, they didn't do a good job, and they haven't done a good job the last few years of winning the games that are in front of them in non-conference. I mean, obviously North Carolina was kind of the poster child for that last year. They had the opportunities, and you win a couple of those, and you're pretty firmly in the tournament, but you don't, and so you have to sweat it on Selection Sunday. So we can get into kind of all the factors, but I will say it's the right thing to do. It's a smart thing to do, but I think it says a lot about the state of the ACC.
Yeah, where I'm kind of at with it is our friend Isaac Trotter put together a list of the non-conference games that the ACC has played against top 100 teams the last 4 seasons, right? They were 18-35 in 21-22. They were 22-33 in the 22-23 season. They were 23-37 in the 23-24 season, and they were 22-60 this past year. They had more difficult scheduling this past season. There was very clearly a narrative where the league said, we need better non-conference games from you. And the ACC overall played better non-conference games, on average about 1.5 more top 100 opponents per team in the league in total, right? And they won fewer games in 22 more opportunities against top 100 teams. None of this matters if you're not going to go out and win those games, right? That's my biggest thing is you can sit here and you can say we need all of this stuff played. You got to go out and win them, bottom line.
You're right. And I think we can get in, this probably is a conversation too we can get into with the Big 12, because the Big 12 has knocked it out of the park in terms of realignment. I mean, think about the teams that they've brought in and how that's boosted the national profile for that, and what it's done for the ACC realignment. Because what you just referenced, that the most recent season, you add Cal, you add Stanford, you add, SMU is okay, but the realignment hasn't, as much as I think it helped them early, because they were, one of the early ones to realign, it hasn't recently. And teams have obviously caught up. But I think, and we can talk about scheduling and the strength of some of these teams, but for me, the biggest issue with the ACC over the last, let's call it 5 years, has been coaching. Like, I think there's a lot of schools that have gotten it wrong. And this isn't to single out these 3 schools, but they were very well-respected schools in the conference, good basketball tradition, that I think have pulled down that conference recently. And that's Notre Dame, Florida State, and Syracuse. Those 3 in particular, if you want to, what those 3 have in common, Rob, are there were 3 teams that had coaches that probably stayed a little bit longer than they should have. And then you hit that intersection of NIL and the portal. And those three teams, those three schools who, again, really good basketball tradition, have been to one NCAA tournament combined in the NIL portal era. It's impossible. That should not be possible with those three schools. And if you want to say, hey, they've diverted resources for Notre Dame and Florida State to football, fine. But Syracuse, I think, ended up running off their biggest donor. So there's just a lot that's gone on, and we can, again, like I think for what Pat Kelsey did coming in, immediately changing Louisville, immediately vaulting them to the top of the conference. I think Odom has a chance to do that. I think Will Wade has a chance to do that. We'll see how Laux ends up doing at Florida State. Obviously, there's a number of coaches that have come into the league that I think can change that overall image of the league. But to me, that's where it starts.
Yeah, I would point to Syracuse specifically. Notre Dame a little bit, but I understand Notre Dame diverting resources to football. That is, Notre Dame football is one of the most iconic brands in American sports. Like, I get it. And Florida State is a football school. So I kind of get it with Florida State a little bit too. Syracuse is the one that's inexcusable to me. Syracuse is like Louisville in the sense that you have this massive fan base. You have a huge population of people that care about the orange more than just about any other sport in that area, right? Like Syracuse basketball is the professional sport of a certain area in upstate New York. Same way that Louisville is the professional sport in the city of Louisville in Kentucky and kind of the broader Louisville area. And the fact that we are looking at they've been to the tournament once since 2019, right? And even towards the end of the Jim Boeheim era, there were periods where they were sneaking in as opposed to being able to kind of be this national power that they've been in the past. Syracuse has to be better. I think Pitt has to be better. Pitt's been to one NCAA tournament since 2016, man. Like, what are we doing here? That's Pittsburgh basketball. Maybe just because I grew up on the Big East, I'm a little bit biased here. But when I think of Pitt, I'm thinking Carl Krauser. I'm thinking Levance Fields, right? I'm thinking those Jamie Dixon teams. I'm thinking Brandon Knight. I'm thinking of how tough they were. I'm thinking of how physical they were defensively. And you don't see that right now with Pitt basketball. And I think a lot of that is the way that I think Pitt built their brand was they went out and they got some of the kind of under the radar kids from the pipeline of players that are coming from those Big East cities, right? Whether it's New York, whether it's Trenton, whether it's Camden, whether it's Philadelphia, that corridor on I-95, they were able to go and just kind of pick who they wanted that wasn't picked up by the UConns and the Syracuse and the St. John's of the world. And they were able to find guys under the radar that really, really thrived in the system that they played. I don't know if they're doing that anymore, right? Do kids from New York care about playing in the ACC the way they cared about playing in the Big East? So I'm kind of with you there, which gets me back to how did we get the ACC to being a great basketball conference again? And I think, and tell me what you think about this, I think the biggest thing is you cannot have years where North Carolina is fighting to get into the NCAA tournament. You just can't, right? Like, the bottom of the league needs to be brought up, but it needs to start with, it has to be Duke, it has to be Carolina, and it has to be Louisville, and it has to be those three teams, and they have to be top 10 every season. It's got to be. There's enough kind of stuff dragging them down to the bottom and reasons for and excuses that are going to get made. You got to have those the top three teams in that conference be top 10-ish kind of teams in America. You just have to.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think those three teams have to be up there. I mean, when you talk about the resources and the tradition, the history, all that, but that's why I referenced those three schools in particular: Notre Dame, Syracuse, and Florida State, because like you still need that middle part, that kind of foundation of the conference to help you get to 5, 6, 7 bids. Because if it's either going to be, hey, it's Duke and Louisville, and UNC sneaks in there, Clemson has obviously been solid. I think Clemson was probably hanging out in the middle and just kind of found themselves at the top because a few of these schools have dropped off. But look, I think
I'll tell you what,
those three.
On Brad Brunell and Clemson real quick, like, he has done a fantastic job of taking advantage of the opportunity that has been presented to him. I said this earlier. I feel like he hasn't changed what he does, who he recruits, or the talent that he brings in. He just gets them now for a 5th year instead of a 4th year. He's able to retain them. And instead of having to go up against the likes of prime Jim Boeheim and, the North Carolina team that is competing for national championships every year, and Leonard Hamilton's Florida State and Tony Bennett in Virginia when they're at the peak of their powers. Now he's kind of going up against teams that are more similar to what Clemson was 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, right? And I think he's been able to take advantage of that. So shout out to him, man. Brad Brunell's indestructible.
No, he definitely is. We've seen that proven over the years, but again, this goes back to coaching. It's the same thing. This is why I keep getting back to that, because just like you mentioned with Pitt, if you go back and whatever you want to look at, Basketball Reference, Sports Reference, whatever, look at the line of demarcation of when that success stops happening. It's when Jamie Dixon left. He left and it was done. So that's my point, is once you start getting and they start nailing these coaching hires. And I think, again, Pat Kelsey was a great start to get this conference back to where it needs to be. Now you start getting the more high profile recruits, the money starts flowing in, and they'll go back to what I think was, and correct me if I'm wrong, Rob, because I grew up, you mentioned Levance Fields, DeJuan Blair, like that, Sam Young, those teams were amazing for Pitt. But it was just a different type of athleticism that was in the conference. Like the ACC has all of a sudden become, to me, probably the least athletic power conference. Am I wrong about that?
No.
Okay.
You're right.
That's kind of where it starts. Because then if you don't have the athletes, you aren't going to do anything in non-conference. Because you're going to go up against a lot of these schools from the Big 12 and SEC that are going to run you off the floor at times. We've seen
I have a take on that, and I'm curious what you think about this. I think we've seen the investment the SEC has made in basketball from an NIL perspective, from a coaching hire perspective, from upgrading facilities perspective. And I think that now all of those kids from the South that were like, I got to get to NC State, I got to get to Wake, I got to find a way to be able to get to North Carolina. Like, those are the schools that they're pining for. I'll go to Florida State because Leonard Hamilton's going to, break me off something, and, they're going to get me to the NBA. Now it's like they're ending up at Auburn and they're ending up at Alabama, and the ACC is not the place where the talent-rich areas of the South are sending their best players. And I think it's just as simple as that. I do kind of want to pivot here, because the biggest reason I got you on is to talk a little bit about Illinois, because I am thoroughly fascinated by the Euro invasion that we are seeing in the great city of Champaign, Illinois right now. And
great city.
The great city of Champaign, Illinois. I'm very interested to see how this is going to play out, where you have Brad Underwood, Tata Brad. He's not Daddy Brad anymore. He's Tata Brad, out here trying to rebuild a EuroLeague team in real time. And I'm fascinated by what this experiment is going to look like. I don't know how you can put Tommy Ivasic and Big Z on the same roster and expect to have any kind of like impact on the defensive end of the floor. But it seems like Brad Underwood's doing it, man. If I would have told you, like in his Stephen F. Austin days, right? Like in the days where this is the dude that's getting out and pressuring you and trying to force 100 turnovers a game, playing the kind of swing offense that he used to play. And now it's booty ball and it's pace and space and it's, set ball screens and try to get up 87,000 threes a game. This is not the Brad Underwood that my brain is accustomed to thinking about.
Well, I think if there's one thing Brad Underwood can do, and he's proven over the years, it's adapt. And how many coaches, how many programs have we seen kind of left in the dust for their inability to do that? And so, there's just been different iterations of this Illinois team, and he's needed to, because there has been some roster overhaul from year to year. Last year in particular, I think they brought the only guy that had returning minutes was Dre Gibbs-Allhorn, because Ty Rodgers was redshirting. So you had to kind of mold the system over again. And 2 years ago when Marcus Damas came in, it was, hey, let's shift our offense to go into back downs and play out of it and just play in transition. Hey, we got Kofi Coburn, we're gonna go 4 out, 1 in. Hey, like, he's been able to change and mold their scheme and everything around the personnel, as opposed to like, here is what I want to do, go find the players who do it. It's he obviously has a plan, and I think this year in particular, I think there's a big difference in the structure and philosophy from a roster standpoint for Illinois. Last year, again, total overhaul. This year, and last year was being reliant on freshmen, but this year, I think you look at the retention, and if you include Ty Rodgers in that retention, the minutes he played on that Elite Eight team 2 years ago, they returned 60% plus of their minutes. And they returned 2 double-digit scores from that team last year. Tomislav Ivicic and Kylan Boswell were their 2 most consistent players by the end of that season. And you return both of them as really kind of pillars and foundations. You got a point of attack defender, and you got, a guy who I think is going to shoot it better from 3 this year. He proved that at Arizona. Had to kind of find his way. And then Tomislav, I think, was just kind of completely overlooked with his production last year. He's 14-8, 50-35, almost 80, a positive assist to turnover ratio as a 7'1" center. I mean, he was outstanding. And you get that guy back, and with that rotation with his brother, I think people are looking at that as a tandem Twin Towers thing, and I think it's going to be more of a rotation at the 5 thing because they did get other pieces that
minute kind of a thing,
right? Which I think makes more sense. I think we can all agree on that because it's just you would really have to finagle things to make that work defensively. Although it's a lot of length, as much. And Z was great as a rim protector last year, not so much in space and off the ball, but I like the way that they brought.
You're being very kind when you say not so much in space or off the ball. Like let's just erase all of the stuff that we watched on Synergy RIP of Big Z trying to guard ball screens and trying to play drop coverage. I don't ever want to think about it ever again.
It wasn't great. But look at the team. I mean, you get back again 60% plus your minutes. And then I like that this isn't an overhaul. I like that it's not being reliant on freshmen anymore because think about the way that they filled the gaps, right? Okay, what are the questions at point guard? You go out and you get Petrovic, who I think the conversations got a little crazy for him. I mean, when he committed, people were like, move over, Braden Smith. I don't think that's what it's going to be with Petrovic, but what he is a really, really good ball screen point guard, table setter, which is really what they need. He's a high assist, low turnover guy. And then you look at Stojakovic, who, again, big investment in him, obviously, but what he did at Cal, 18 a game, efficiency wasn't really there. But this is why I love this commitment and I love the fit, is because it's a really damn good system fit for Andres, just like your guy, Silas Demery. It's the same thing. I mean, that is a really good fit for him because when both of those guys, and you look at efficiency, the system is going to aid that. The system and the guys around Andres is going to allow him to be more efficient, whether it's from beyond the arc, but I think about the 5 out that they played in that Will Riley spot where the ball, Ivicic gets the ball up top, the wingman cuts through. You make that Stojakovic, he's getting 4 to 6 points a game off of that. Now he can play faster. He's not next to 2 non-shooting 5 men like Matty Sissoko and Lee Dort. This is, again, it's not just about going out and getting talent. I think they really filled in these different holes, and then everybody wants to go 2 bigs nowadays. You get Mirkovic from Montenegro, the same team that the Ivicic were on, and then you sprinkle Z in as a guy off the bench, however you want to play it. I think they nailed this offseason.
Yeah. Where do you see them standing in kind of the pecking order of the Big Ten at this point? Because to me, it's Purdue and everyone else. I'm going to have a very difficult time, and I'll be honest. I love what Houston's done. I think St. John's getting the kid from Idaho State as a point guard has kind of convinced me that they are a legitimate top 5 team. I love what UConn's done this offseason. I think Texas Tech is really underrated. I'm going to have a very, very difficult time not making Purdue be the preseason number 1 team and not having Braden Smith be the preseason player of the year for me nationally, not just in the Big Ten, nationally. Can Illinois compete with them? Are they on the same tier as Purdue?
I think for Purdue, it remains to be seen what it looks like defensively. I think it'll be better, and I'll get into those reasons. But I think if you told me, Rob, hey, I'm going to make Purdue the preseason number 1 team in the country, I couldn't argue with you because you got the best point guard in America. You have another All-American at the 4-5, and you got one of the best coaches in the game. I mean, did you check those 3 boxes? Who else can say that? in America. And I know, I mean, Houston just played in the title game, but LJ Cryer was a big piece for them. Juwan Roberts was a big piece for them. Like they lost some substantial pieces. And when we look at preseason rankings, which I don't know how much stock everybody wants to put into them, but if you're going to do them, Purdue fits all the criteria there. Now, like what I do really like about them, I talked about the retention, who they bring back. You get year 4 of Lawyer. I think CJ Cox is going to take a step forward. You fortified that front court rotation. I mean, last year, Caleb First, thank God he kind of came on late in the year and he played his role, but Jacobson and Clough coming in, being a part of that front court rotation, I think will allow them to not necessarily have to hide Trey Coffin-Renn like they did last year. They had to get so creative with coverages not because Trey Coffin-Renn's a bad defender. They just need to keep him out of foul trouble because they didn't have anybody in the front court. Now I think you can be maybe a little bit more aggressive or have more of a set defense that you want to run. I think that's only going to help them on that end. But one of the most important pieces too for Purdue, when you look at Omer Mayer or Meyer, however you pronounce it, that's something they didn't have last year. And that's a guy, and we'll see how effective he is at this level, but that's a guy that can at least spell Braden Smith a little bit. And I'm not even talking about when Braden's out of the game. Braden doesn't go out of the game very much. When he's in the game, because you look at the end of the season last year, Braden Smith played, 5 of those last 6 games he played all 40 minutes. And the one he didn't, he played 39. That may still be the case next year, but it's a different type of 40 minutes. It's not 40 minutes with the weight of the world on your shoulders, manning all the ball handling responsibilities. So he can at least alleviate some of that. Mayer can. Who can compete with them? I mean, we'll see what it looks like defensively. Jacobson's going to help that as just a guy at 7'3", 7'4", that's going to be in the interior that you're adding to this crop. But
Clough too, man. I think it's going to be Clough this year. I think Jacobson. I think the reason they brought in Clough was because they wanted a little bit of a window to get Jacobson up to speed at that 5 spot. And Clough, I'm telling you, man, like I got an up close look at him with South Dakota State when we had him in our event in Sioux Falls, and that dude is like every bit of 7'1", 260 pounds. Like he is an enormous human being that can do all of the stuff that Matt Painter is going to want a 7'1" massive human being to be able to do.
Yeah, and I think I don't think he'll be anywhere near the production he had at South Dakota State last year, but I do think he'll be a step up from where he was at Washington State. I think he was 8-4 maybe, and depending on how and again, Matt Painter isn't shy to kind of rotate guys. I mean, we saw Zach Edey and Trevion Williams just went straight right down the middle, 19 minutes, whatever it ended up being. I don't think he's afraid to do that if he just wants to stick Trey Coffin right at the 4 the majority of the time. So yeah, I think that's going to be interesting. And but again, who competes with them? I think we just talked about Illinois. I think Illinois is a lot easier to forecast this year than they were last year. I think they'll be in that mix. I think when you look at everyone else, Michigan is the team that, as far as draft decisions go, that is the team that is going to experience the most variance based off of one decision with Lendenberg. Like I think his decision is going to sway that team to either probably projected either second in the conference to 6th or 7th, truly. Because you look at like the Danny Wolf blueprint that's been set. I mean, Yax fits in perfectly to that and was almost a 2-to-1 assist to turnover ratio guy, albeit in a weaker conference. And Michigan had those issues last year, but I like the pieces around them. We'll see what happens with Cadeau. They're going to be in the mix there. Michigan State, I mean, it's so funny to me because I think they're lingering. Tom Izzo got a taste of being at the top of that league again, and he's gonna want that feeling again. And when I look at their system, Michigan State's system, it's still there. What do? They rebound and they play with pace. Fears is still there. Cohen Carr is still there. All those guys, the front court. I mean, Zapala's gone, but Cooper and Kohler, they're still there, and they still rebound their asses off. And so you add Caleb Glenn to that, who's a gazelle who can inhale rebounds and glass. You add Trey Fort to that,
Hey,
who's kind of like a mini Bryn Forbes.
Caleb Glenn is a freak athlete. Like he's not quite Cohen Carr, but he is a freak athlete. He could shoot it. He could score. Like, I think that he got a little bit of that Louisville stink off of him last year by going to FAU and finding a way to be able to be competitive on a winning team. Like, he is, when I think of Tom Izzo wings, like those guys in the 3-4 spot that are 6'7", that are built like football players, that can rebound, that can get to the rim, that can make enough shots, but are just kind of out there, like more physical and more athletic than you. Like, he's kind of in that mold. And I think that you could play him and Cohen Carr together at the 3-4 with a 5-man out there and feel really good about it. And Trey Fort is he didn't have the greatest year in Mississippi State last year, but the dude is he's a flamethrower that averaged like 20 a game on like 42% from three at the JUCO ranks. And I know it's JUCO, but he's got SEC experience. He can get him up. He's not Jace Richardson, but I don't think you need him to be Jace Richardson.
No, you don't. And it remains to be seen. I know they're in the mix for this point guard over in Israel as well. That would just, again, I think they know last year their system really raised their floor, but Jace Richardson pushed that ceiling higher. And so the who they got right now with that system is great, but they're going to need probably one more guy, I think, to push that over the top. And then I think the last team that you got to look at is UCLA. And I wouldn't have. So I see some people ranking them like in the top 10. I don't see that at all. I think they're in that, like, 22 to 28 range. The retention is nice. I mean, you add Donovan Dent, of course. I mean, but Bilodeau was tremendous last year for them as a stretch four, and he played the 5 sometimes. But what do you like? Do you start Xavier Booker at the 5? I mean, I know you're going to have Dent, you're going to have Clark, you're going to have Daly. Maybe Perry makes his way in there. But do you start Booker at the 5? And are you in the sweepstakes for Darian Williams? Like, I don't know, because that would obviously be a needle mover. Right now, I don't see the top 10 outlook for them, but they could be one really impact piece away from at least being in those conversations.
Yeah, look, anyone that gets Darian Williams to me is getting someone that I will have be a first-team All-American next year. I'll tell you that, like, point blank period right now, unless it's a situation where he ends up going to a team just for the highest bidder where it's very obvious he's not going to be on a winning team. Like, that dude is one of the best basketball players that nobody talked about last year. And wherever he ends up, he's going to be – if he goes to UCLA will be a top 10 team for me. I'll tell you that right now. UCLA with him and Donovan Dent will be a top 10 team to me. I'm going to make my pitch for Indiana here, and you might call me crazy, but I think that Lamar Wilkerson is going to come in and have a Chaz Lanier kind of impact this season. I think that they are very, very similar players. I think that the way that he was sold on playing alongside Tucker DeVries is that it's going to be those two, right? Like, one of the recruiting pitches that he got was basically Tucker played with who was West Virginia's point guard last year? I'm blanking on his name. Javon Small, right? If you look at Javon Small's numbers playing with Tucker DeVries, he scored more and had more assists playing alongside Tucker DeVries than he did after Tucker DeVries went out. I think you could put those two on the wings. You got two big-time shooters and big-time scorers. You got Connor Enright, who is a kind of a pass-first point guard. You got Tatum Connerway, who is a get-to-the-rim point guard. I really like Reed Bailey as the 4-man in that lineup. I think they did a really good job adding some perimeter pieces alongside him, Josiah Miles, Dick Thorne. They need a 5, right? I don't know if Sam Alexis is enough for him there, and I don't know if they're going to be able to find somebody. But I think there's enough on that roster for them to be in that mix for like top 25-ish and be one of those top 5 teams in the Big Ten. Am I crazy?
You're not crazy. I mean, we're going to have to see a lot of these guys. I mean, this is a lot of guys coming from the mid-major ranks, and that can go one of two ways. So I think what DeVries did do is identify, and getting Tucker is huge. That gives you a lot of, I think, stability. But what it does do, or what he did do, is find guys that play their ass off consistently, find guys that can space the floor, that can shoot it. I mean, it opens up so much. And there's a lot of these dudes that they're bringing into that compete on the defensive end. And that's what Indiana basketball needs to get back to. I mean, we can talk about hanging banners and going to Final Fours and all that, but you need to start somewhere. And I think part of that is shifting the culture a little bit to get back to the DNA that those teams had. I mean, the winning came along with it, but it starts with having tough guys. And I mean, I saw your interview with Lamar. That's a really good kid that just wants to hoop. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the type of guys they need to bring in there. And I think that's what he did. So that's always going to give you a chance. And certainly I don't think there'll be as much volatility as that team experienced last year. Part of it is because I think expectations will be a little bit more tame probably for this team. And they have a chance to exceed those. I firmly believe that. I think this should be a top, probably a top 7 or 8 team preseason. And then how these pieces gel and how they adjust to the high major level will determine, how high that goes from there.
Yeah. Yeah. I tend to agree. All right, we got to get to the Big 12 here because we got to talk about Iowa State, and I know that you have some opinions on them. I got some opinions on Kansas and kind of what they've done this offseason. Baylor's an interesting conversation as well, and we do have to get in some draft sleepers that you have put together, and of course, we're going to talk about college basketball teams going full zone. Bring back Jim Boeheim, says Mike LaTulip. All that coming up after the break. If you haven't heard by now, we have partnered with BetMGM for this season. We'll be using BetMGM lines to make all of our picks, and we'll have special offers for the listeners and the viewers. Download the BetMGM app and sign up using the bonus code FIELD. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game, and you'll receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets. Go download the BetMGM app and use the code FIELD today. Well, welcome back to the Field of 68 after lunch. Rob Doster and Mike LaTulip. We just spent a solid 20 minutes breaking down the top of the Big Ten. Mike agrees with me that Purdue's going to be really good. He's also a big fan of Illinois. Shocker that the guy with an Illinois jersey in the background of his setup is a big fan of the Illini. But I'm with you, Mike. I think they're going to be a lot of fun to watch this season. We do have to talk about the Big 12 because the Big 12 is in this weird spot where two of the teams that they have brought in from the American in BYU or two of the teams that they've brought in BYU and Houston have kind of staked their claim at the top of the conference, right? Houston has won it 2 years in a row, coming off of a Final Four. BYU has the number one recruit in the country coming in and just stole a point guard from a guy that won a national championship in 2021. And then you have Texas Tech, who's got all this oil billionaire tycoon money flowing through their program, and JT Toppin coming back and Christian Anderson coming back. Grant McCaslin kind of going out and getting whatever pieces he wants that fit perfectly within his system. I think that he's I would make the argument he is as good as anybody in college basketball right now at identifying what he wants out of a player and what he wants out of a system and finding those guys out in the transfer market. So credit to Texas Tech. But this is a league with Kansas, who won the title in 2022, and Baylor, who won the title in 2021, and Iowa State, another program that has been kind of one that we've thought about at the top of the league for a long time, Mike. And did they do enough this offseason to stay there? Did they do enough for us to be able to look here and say, yeah, yes, Iowa State is going to be a contender in the Big 12 again next season?
Not currently as constructed. I think what's helped them the last few years has been that retention piece. It's why they were ranked so high preseason last year, is because Gilbert was back and Lipsey was back, Momcilovic was back, Jones was back. I mean, they had a lot of those guys coming back. And although you do have Lipsey back, you do have Jefferson back, Momcilovic is back. I mean, Gilbert, replenishing the Gilbert and Jones scoring punch, you have to. I think if you want to be able to compete in this conference. Now, what I will say is, Otts has done such a good job. I look particularly with that team last year. You go out and you get Jefferson, you get Deshaun Jackson, you get Heisey, you get Chatfield, you get these different guys. I think really filled in nicely as guys coming from the mid-major level to be role guys around some of these. And Jefferson proved to be more probably high usage than anybody expected him to be. But he's still, I think Otts has done some of that this offseason, but it's not the same roster as last offseason. So I think we're still waiting, unless you look at like Dominic Nelson and Mason Williams, and you're expecting some sort of leap when they come to the high major level to be that impact scorer. I got to think that they're not done. That they may have one more addition to make. Now they still have, I think, a really solid identity where they want to turn you over, they want to get out, they want to try to get to the free throw line at a high rate. But again, you lose Gilbert, who was a huge component of that. So how do they replenish that? I don't have them in that top tier, and that's not even a knock on Iowa State, because I think particularly Houston and Texas Tech are that good.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with it too. Like I think there's an argument to be made that Texas Tech and Houston are both in the top tier when it comes to like national title contenders for next season, right? And I think I'm not quite there yet on BYU, but like name me a better top three on paper than Robert Wright, AJ DeBonsa, and Richie Saunders, right? Like you got three guys that could legitimately be in the conversation for first team All Big 12. Name me a better top three that anybody in America has. I mean, Braden Smith, Fletcher Lawyer, and Trey Kaufman-Renn, like that's probably to me the only one that's really in that same kind of conversation, right? And I just don't think that Iowa State is there. And I don't think that they need to be there either, because Otts has kind of built this thing in the mold of the sum is going to be greater than the parts. But that's a lot easier to do when your parts are Keshawn Gilbert and Curtis Jones, who are two guys that can go out and get you 25 on any given night. Sometimes both of them got 25 on the same night. I do think it'll help that Lipsy hopefully will be healthier. And Junior Momcilovic, I think, is someone that can kind of step in and have a bigger impact. But I'm kind of with you, man. Like I'm a little bit underwhelmed with this iteration of the Iowa State roster. If I had to guess, I think what he's banking on is some of these freshmen are going to come in. They're going to have a year where they kind of maybe are, I'm doing air quotes here for the people listening on audio, only top 25-ish. But have those guys come around. You still got another year with Lipsy. You still got another year with Momcilovic. So hopefully by the time that's all said and done, you're looking at a situation where you're going to have some veterans with some returning presences in that freshman. Does that make sense? Like I feel like he's kind of building this one with a 2-year window in mind.
Yeah, and I don't want Iowa State fans listening to this to think that this is just a continuation of how the season ended, because I think, Rob, you and I can both agree that that probably wasn't a fair calculation of Iowa State by the end of that season, with all the injuries, and they just didn't have a ton of continuity by the end of it. But this is just truly trying to look at this roster and forecast out in a conference that, let's be real. I mean, Alabama's probably taking a little bit of a step back. Auburn's probably taking a little bit of a step back. I mean, we'll see. But I mean, the Big 12 could be a conference this year that we look at and talk about like the SEC last year. So that's the reason why we're talking about Iowa State like this, is because if you want to compete for a conference title in this conference in particular, you're going to need some dudes, and they have that. But I think they're going to need to have some of these dudes pop or get another addition to compete for that, for the conference.
Yeah, it's funny, right? Like once you've kind of climbed the tower and you've reached that like top 5, top 6, top 7 nationally conversation, all of a sudden when you take a step back, I mean, let's. They had a year where they went 2-22 under my guy Steve Prohm, right? It was not a good season. I love Steve Prohm. It was not a good season for Iowa State. And if we would have told Iowa State fans at that point, yeah, you know what, you're going to have a perennial top 25 team when Otts gets here, I think they would have taken that. But at the same time, once you're kind of like, yeah, you know what, they've been top 5, top 10 the last 3 years, and now all of a sudden you're looking at it like, yeah, you know what, they might just be good. Then it's kind of the weight of expectations that come with the program. They'll be in my preseason top 25. What about Kansas? I remain once again underwhelmed with the work that Kansas did in the portal, right? Like getting some of these guys back mattered. And I do think that Trey Wright and Melvin Counselor are two guys that in theory are really nice fits. But I look at what Duke did when they were building a roster around Cooper Flagg, where they got some really good freshmen, obviously, but they went out and got a bunch of guys in the portal that were just role players that could go out there and do a job. And I don't know if that's necessarily what Kansas has done, but like Jaden Dawson's a shooter, Trey White's a shooter. How are you going to make this all work with those three guys, with Darren Peterson? You got to have Flory on the floor. You got to have DeJuan Harris. I'm sorry, not DeJuan Harris. But you got to have Darren Peterson on the floor. Like how is this all going to work with what Bill Self has put together in Lawrence.
This is a team that I think for sure isn't done. They can't be done. I know they're in on Dame Sarr from Barcelona, which would be a really good add on the wing. But you look at Darren Peterson. Like Darren Peterson, I think is could be the freshman of the year in college basketball. And I say that not a hot take whatsoever.
No,
but all these freshmen, you still need. I mean, look at the teams that were really freshman dependent last year with Rutgers. I mean, even Illinois to a degree with some of these guys that were projected lottery picks. It's hard to win if you don't have an insulation around those guys to to help them kind of get through. And Peterson's peaks and valleys throughout a season, his valleys aren't going to be as low as a normal freshman's valleys, but that floor is raised when you have a really, really good crop of guys around him. And I think, I mean, we obviously got as an Illinois grad, I got a really close up look of Trey White. I mean, he's a guy that in the right role can be really impactful. And he's a great offensive rebounder. He gives you second chance opportunities. He takes on the challenge defensively. He's willing to play fast, all those things. You mentioned Dawson being able to shoot at Council, I think is a good pickup. I think, and I don't know if they're in the Williams sweepstakes. They should be, because I think that's when you look at this at this roster. I mean, that's a pickup that would make sense. And then Badunga, I think it's gonna be very clear now what the role is for him in that front court. Last year it was just kind of you're in, you're out, you're with Hunter, you're not with Hunter. I think he's going to have a little more certainty, and I think he'll be a little bit more effective that way. So, again, they kind of fall in the Iowa State category to me, where I don't think they definitely haven't done enough to this point to compete for the title. But I definitely don't think they're done. There's no chance that they're done.
Say this.
And then like Bill Self coming off of last year, there's no way Bill Self isn't like we're shutting everybody the hell up this year. There's no way he's not thinking that.
Yeah, I'll say this about Darian Williams, right? If I am his agent and I'm looking at a program like Kansas, right? It's Kansas. You know they have to have some kind of money. There's money lying around somewhere with the money they're paying Bill Self. You know they got something under some couch cushions somewhere, right? Darian Williams is not going to be a first round pick to me. He's going to be a guy that is a second round at best, like a top 45-ish kind of pick. If he ends up being a late first round pick, it's because all of the guys that are better NBA prospects than him decided to come back to school. And I think that he's worth $3.5 million in this market to Kansas. Because if you put him at the 4, he's a guy that can score in the post. He's a guy that can pass. He's a guy that can make threes. He is everything. And I'm saying this as one of the biggest KJ Adams fans on the planet, right? He's everything that KJ Adams wasn't. And having a guy like that alongside Darren Peterson, where he already was kind of like the secondary guy, right, last season to who was the kid that they brought in from Grand Canyon, right? And he already was a secondary guy to JT Toppin, who was like very similar to what Floyd Badunga is like in the ideal role that he's played. Like if I'm looking at Darian Williams and I'm saying that's the addition that I got. If I'm Kansas, that's who I'm trying to get. And if I am Darian Williams' agent, I'm going to Kansas and I'm saying $4 million and he's yours, with the idea that like maybe it's 3.2 that you can get, something along those lines, right? Like that's,
and he's
in an ideal. If he's there, if Darian Williams ends up at Kansas, then we're having a real conversation about Kansas in the like Houston, Texas Tech tier. And I don't think that that's a hot take or an exaggeration.
I think he's the exact ilk of Kansas kind of big wing that they've had over the years. I mean, he's not the athlete of like a Wayne Selden or Svi or Agbaji or any of those guys, but Kansas is one with big wings that can step out, that can shoot it. That's been the formula. And I think this would be the year for them to get back to that.
Yep. Let's pivot here. Let's talk a little draft, a little NBA kind of conversation here. You put together a list. I've not seen this list of guys that you have as, I don't know how you want to phrase this, because you tell me how you want to phrase it. Is it sleepers? Is it guys that are going to rise in the draft process? Is it players that you think are underrated by the consensus right now? What is this list that you've given us?
It is what's today? May 8th. Yeah, it's May 8th. These are people that I think are going to rise between now and draft day through pre-draft workouts, through drill work, through the combine, all that. That's how I kind of put together this list. So keep that in mind.
Okay. Locked
So you
in.
still haven't seen this list. Okay, here we go.
No. Yeah. Common Malawach, Jeremiah Fears, Carter Bryant, Neat Clifford. I love that one. Rasheer Fleming, Jace Richardson, Will Riley, and Ryan Kalkbrenner. Let's start. I want to start with the two guys that are from outside the power conference ranks in Neat Clifford and Rasheer Fleming, because those are two guys that I kind of identified on my own as well. Talk to me. Let's do Neat Clifford first, because I don't think people are appreciating, like, I think this dude can step in and you could even plug him in right now and put him on like a playoff team's roster, and he's giving you 15 minutes and he's contributing and he's helping.
Yep. Yeah. And I think the consensus over the years was always, well, he's 23 years old, so that's going to hurt his stock. These dudes play till they're 38 now. Till they're, 35, 36, 37. It's the shelf life is extended for NBA players. So, and we've seen it over the years. I mean, I look at Clifford and think about Devin Carter and Agbaji. I mean, these guys that have been older guys that have gone in the lottery. That's where I think Neat can end up. And it's the creation, it's the shot making, particularly off the bounce, his ability to score at all three levels. He's a really, really phenomenal athlete. I think we've seen that. That's going to pop, I think, in the pre-draft process. And he's a guy that through his time at Colorado and even at Colorado State when he played with Isaiah Stevens, he's played different roles. And that's a really important facet to his game that I think allows him to translate a little bit better, I think, to the NBA level. But I agree. I think he's a guy that can come in and make an immediate impact. I mean, look at the Thunder drafting at 15. Right? Yeah. Like, I mean, that'd just be that would be a wild wild pickup for them. But Fleming, I kind of threw into the ilk of like a Naz Reid / like, the importance of like those guys and Jared Vanderbilt, like these guys that can be kind of utility foremen that can, Naz in particular can step out like Fleming has proven. He's 6'9", 7'5" wingspan. I think he's going to, again, be another guy that in workouts, 1-on-1, 3-on-3, when they do these pre-draft workouts, I mean, he's another guy probably at the combine as well that will really pop in front of these scouts.
Yeah, I love both of them, right? I think Neat Clifford is probably a little bit more well-rounded, where Rasheer Fleming, you're kind of bringing him in to play a very specific role. But when you look at the percentage of your salary cap as an NBA team that has to go to your superstar, especially if you want to be able to consistently have a chance to win, and the fact that a lot of times you need like two of those superstars. Sometimes you have two guys that are on max salary, which is like a lot of money to be able to spending a lot of your cap that you're dedicating to just two guys. You need players that can come in on the cheap and do a really good job for you right off the bat. And that's where these older guys from college programs, where you can trust that they can do a job and are willing to do a job, can come in and be so valuable. Like I look at someone like a Christian Brown, right, with the Nuggets. Exactly. He's averaging 15 points this year, started 77 games, and he's making $3 million a year, which allows you to have Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic and Aaron Gordon, a lot of these guys that are on much bigger salaries, that are much better players, that are going to be much more expensive. You need those guys to kind of fill out the rest of your roster, and those are two that, to me, kind of stand out more than anything else. I feel like Malawach and Ryan Kalkbrenner are on that list for kind of the same reason. Talk me through both those guys. Malawach specifically, because he's someone where my expectation was coming into this year he would have a little bit more of a difficult transition to college, and I think he actually did.
Yeah, I think the further we get away from the Houston game, I think his stock is going to continue to rise, because that wasn't a good game for him. He wasn't impactful. He got pushed around a little bit, didn't get a rebound. But look, he played his role to a T at Duke as an anchor, as a defender, as a guy that you could switch out on the perimeter in some instances, and as a lob threat. He didn't need to do a ton offensively, although I think there's more in there from him offensively. So that's what I looked at for Malawach, and we've seen some of the tantalizing videos of him being able to, I mean, I think just yesterday you saw like the 14 threes in a row that he made, and this is the exact reason why Zach Edey improved his stock last year, because I buy the ability to step out for Malawach. And that's not to say he's going to come in and shoot 6 threes a game. It's the fact that you at least have to think about him and how that opens up your offense, what that makes him as a guy that you can move around on the floor, in addition to him obviously being probably primarily a lob threat. And then I mean, I don't know. What are your thoughts there on Malawai? And when I say riser, he's more in, I see him in like the 6 to 8 range, but I could totally see a team convincing themselves at 4, right? And given the fit, 4 or 5, saying like, hey, 4 years of organized basketball, 5, whatever it is, let's buy into it. I mean, think about the Sixers. What's the shelf life on Embiid? I mean, there's a lot I think you can look at there.
I'm a little bit lower on him, I think, than you are overall. Cause when you're drafting up there, especially in like the 4, 5, 6 range, and you have guys like Ace Bailey and Trey Johnson and Fiji, I think you got to take the lottery ticket potential when it comes to guys in that range. I do think that Malawach is going to be a good pro and he's going to hang around for a while for all the reasons that you just mentioned, right? Like, and I think a lot of those boxes get checked with Ryan Kalkbrenner as well in terms of being an elite rim protector, really, really good defensively that can step out a little bit and shoot it more, a little bit more of a perimeter playmaker than he probably got credit for because of what he did in college and the way that he played at Duke. But I think to me, I think that there's all-star potential with like 4 or 5 guys in this draft. And if you have a chance to draft an all-star with the number 5 pick, I think you got to take it as opposed to getting a guy that can, maybe if he ends up being Clint Capella, you're having a really good draft year. You know what I'm saying? Like that's my only hang up with Malawach. I think he's kind of reached the top of where his ceiling can be. What was the rest of that list? Can you bring that back up, Dagan, just so we can kind of go over the last couple of guys on there? Jeremiah Carter Bryant. Let's get to Carter Bryant. Carter Bryant is a really, really interesting one to me because I think you mentioned someone earlier about being one of the big swing. Yaks mentioned Yaks is one of the big swing guys in the draft. To me, the single biggest swing guy in the draft right now, with where we know where he would come back to, is Carter Bryant at Arizona. I think this dude coming back to school would be out of his mind. To me, he is a lottery pick. I thought the last month of the season
I think
was absolutely phenomenal for him.
No, he was, and I think he could slide into the top 10. To be honest, I think when you look at the length, the shooting, I mean, I think it was lower volume, but his catch and shoot numbers unguarded was 46% this year. Mm-hmm. It's the comp that I would give him when you watch him, because I think the tools that he has physically translate to being a potentially really elite defender at the NBA level. I think he can be that. The shooting is good. He's a 2 dribble guy. I don't think you want him doing more than that. Like, he reminds me a lot of Indiana OG Anunoby. And it's the same time. I don't know if he'll have that type of effect that OG's had. He could, but same type of thing can be an elite defender. Can obviously space the floor, prove that this year, and is kind of that like 1 to 2 dribble, probably single read type of guy. I'm really high on Carter Bryant. I think it would be nuts if he came back to Arizona, but it's certainly, like you're saying, would boost and completely rework how we think about the Wildcats coming into the season.
Yeah, look, when you are 6'8", you can guard 3s and 4s. You can knock down wide open 3s. You have the ability to play off the bounce, and it's very clear that like your projection is still going this direction, right? Like you get better throughout the year. Those are the guys that NBA teams salivate over as a role, not as a star. Like, I don't know if he's going to end up being an all-star caliber player. I do think that in 2 years, 3 years, like he's a 15, 16 point per game guy that's guarding all over the floor, that's switching everything, that's starting, that's making 40% of his threes, that is like the perfect 3rd or 4th option for a playoff team, right? And if you can get a guy like that with the 10th pick of the draft, like, I think you got to go do it. And I think that you pay him whatever it takes. And there's no amount of money that Arizona can pay that would be more than the amount of guaranteed money that he's going to get when he goes pro. Like, Tommy, I'm sorry. Arizona fans, I'm sorry, but like this dude, Carter, you got to go, man. Go to the league. I don't know what your agents are telling you. I don't know what people are telling you, but go. It's your time, brother. It's your time. Then the Jace Richardson one is the last really interesting one I wanted to kind of hit you on because he was one of there's just something about a lefty that is that smooth with like the snatch backs and the step backs and like the way that he creates space. I don't know if it's just like a lefty thing because we're not used to seeing it, but like, what is it about these lefty shooters where it's just they're so tantalizing to watch and you can't stop them? Dude, like, what's coming, you can't stop it.
It's funny because I was folding laundry in my room while I was watching the NBA playoffs, and I have a mirror in my room that reflects towards the TV. So then all these righties in the NBA playoffs look like lefties. And every time they shot, I'm like, God, that looks unbelievable. It just looks. I don't know what it is. I can't put my finger on it. But with Jace, I think you saw what he did for Michigan State this year. But when you just look at where the NBA game has gone, how ball screen dominant it is, how efficient he was in ball screens, how great he was in the intermediate floaters. He was still really strong and long finishing around the rim. The 3-point shooting is obviously there. The lineage is obviously there with his dad. I think he's a better athlete. And that sounds crazy. Jason Richardson's son is a better athlete than we give him credit for, but I think he is a better athlete than we give him credit for. So all of that I think is going to bake in. And I think I've seen him towards the, right now it looks like he's kind of like back towards the, maybe 12, 13, back part of the lottery. But again, he's another guy that wouldn't surprise me if you hear his name get called 8th or 9th. Like that's not crazy at all, given the tools that he has.
You need one team to fall in love with you, and maybe they trade up to go get you. Maybe it's just, you're projected in the 14th, but whoever's picking 8th is just like, yeah, we got to get this kid. Like you just need one team, like Zach Edey last year, right? Everyone was like, this guy's probably going to be mid to late first round pick. Memphis was like, that's our dude. We're going to go up and get him. And he ends up working well. And I'll say this, the thing, I love taking the victory lap as much as anybody, but I think that I was high on Zach Edey heading into the draft. And I think when you look at him, there are guys where I compared that. You might think this is crazy, but I compared him to like a Chet Holmgren or a Zion Williamson or these guys where they're physical tools. You can't necessarily project guys that are built like them up to the next level. Like you don't see guys that are built like that having success while they're also completely dominating the college level of the game. And I think that you could see that translate with Zach Edey, right? Like he's just, we've never seen literally have never seen anything like him before at that level of college basketball, have the success that he had. And there was no doubt in my mind that he was going to be able to go to the NBA and find a way to be able to make something work with a creative coach and a guy like Ja next to him. Like it was so obvious. My favorite thing in the NBA this season was when Draymond Green found out that like you can't fuck with Zach Edey. Like you got a 7'4", right? Go ahead.
Like people were going at me because I was banging the drum for Zach Edey pre-draft as well. I said, well, they're like, well, he doesn't step out and shoot threes. I said, if he doesn't pan out in the NBA, it won't be because he can't step out and shoot threes. It's going to be all the other stuff. But he's shown that you have a role. Like look at how much of an impact Steven Adams had for the Rockets in that series against the Warriors. Like, dude, just be an enforcer. If you're an enforcer that can get extra possessions offensively, you got a place in the league. But the thing that people forget about Zach Edey, they're like, oh, well, he was just scoring on college kids at 7'4". He's tough as shit at 7'4". Like he's not like a big thing as Charmin, dude. He's like he's tough, he's smart, and then by the way, he's 7'4" with a 7'10" and a half wingspan. I mean, like I talked about Kalkbrenner being a bit of a riser, and when I say riser, I'm thinking like second round. Wouldn't be shocked to hear him go 28th, but he has a 7'5" wingspan. I mean, think about 5 extra inches on the wingspan that Edey has. I mean, that's why those guys pan out. And by the way, he shot the cover off the ball in Chicago at the Combine. And then that's how you end up getting into the top 10.
Yeah, and I don't want to turn this into the Zach Edey rave fest, but the idea that anybody thought that dude was soft or you could push him around, like, come on, man. Did you watch any college basketball at all? That dude is an absolute serial killer, right? And I mean that with the utmost possible compliment when you by calling somebody a serial killer. But that dude is nuts. He's strong. He's physical. You do not fuck with him and you do not push him around. He's a 7'4" dude from Canada that came into college and won back-to-back national players of the year. Like I guarantee he's heard everything under the sun said to him. He's scared of Draymond Green. Draymond Green's a foot smaller than him, dude.
You know what the telltale sign was?
7'4". He's 7'4", 300 pounds, came up as a baseball player and a hockey player in Canada, came down to the United States, and like he's not scared of it. I promise you that dude is not scared of a single person in the NBA.
The one thing too that I know for a fact I didn't do when I watched Zach Edey at Purdue, and I'm sure you didn't do either, is so many guys that's not that size. He's a unicorn, but guys that are around that size, you have that moment where you're watching and you're like, dude, you're 7'4". Like, dude, you're 7. Like, realize that you're 7'4". He is fully aware that he's 7'4". and he's
Takes a
fully
beating
aware
to
that
cover.
he's almost 300 pounds. Yeah. So I
Yeah.
think he's, again, like, if you have the IQ to go along with the size, and you are willing to accept a role. I mean, I know we're talking about Zach Edey, but it's a broader point for all these guys in the draft, is like the dudes that can't accept their role, the guys that just want to be kind of heliocentric scorers. Like, dude, we got Devin Booker for that, right? We got Trae Young for
And you
that.
ain't Devin Booker.
Can you
Like, you're
fall?
not Devin Booker. You're not Trae Young.
Can you fall into these other roles? If you can't, then you won't pan out in the league. And the good guys have gone ahead and done that.
Yep. That's kind of where I'm at with it as well. Listen, Mike, we're butting up in an hour here. I'm going to let you save your bringing the zone back to make zones work again, make zones great again.
That was a throw-in. That was a throw-in topic. That was a throw-in topic.
You love the zone, man. Big zone guy. Appreciate you being here, Mike. Appreciate you schooling us a little bit on the Big Ten. And we're gonna get you back in the rotation, man. It's nice to hear your voice. It's nice to see you again. It's been too long, man. I knew you were itching to get back here when I texted you, and literally, like I said, Mike, you want to come on the show on Thursday? And immediately the dots popped up. I was like, oh, he's in. He is locked in. My man's ready to go.
Caged animal, man. It's just, I mean, I've been just pinned down for the last month. It was fun.
Yeah. Yep. All right. Appreciate you being here. Appreciate everyone watching. We'll be back probably on Monday to react to the draft lottery. Not sure on the time yet. Monday with another show, either Wednesday or Thursday next week. So we'll see you guys all on the Field of 68.